We can achieve this two different ways. The first way is to use the puppet pin tool as we have before. Then by clicking on the image, we create a mesh around the transparency, and we can delete that pin, leaving only the puppet effect. But here's an easier way. To see it, first we'll delete the effect. Then with the puppet pin tool selected, hover over the layer, then hold down the Option key or the Alt key on a PC and click on the layer. Notice that a puppet pin hasn't been created, however the effect has been applied. The reason we may want to do this is that now we have an outline for the original image. Here we see the outline, and by clicking a pin anywhere inside here, we can define our mesh this way. We also know that by moving a single pin on a mesh, we'll move the entire mesh. Here we can see that the mesh can be moved outside the boundary of our original layer. The layer's transformation handles are here, defining the outside of our layer. However, the mesh has been moved outside the original shape of our layer. But this hasn't changed our anchor point, and our anchor point will control all of the regular transformations for the entire layer. If we navigate up to the Window pull-down menu, we'll see an option for Motion Sketch. By selecting Motion Sketch, we'll get a new panel down at the bottom, but I'll move this to tab it with the Info panel. Motion Sketch will allow me to draw the motion of my layer. This will automatically create keyframes for my position, both X and Y, as I drag my cursor around the screen. Because position is going to be controlled by my anchor point, the Motion Sketch data will be applied to the position and will be relative to my anchor point. First, let's take a look at the different options inside the Motion Sketch panel. At the very top, we see the Motion Sketch speed. This means that After Effects will capture the motion of your cursor exactly as you draw it. It's not going to play it faster or slower than how you draw. The smoothing is much like the Smoother tool, which we'll take a look at in a minute. What smoothing does is allow After Effects to average all of the keyframes you create by sketching the position data into your composition window. Here the next set is Show Wireframe or Background. By showing the wireframe, we'll see an outline of our layer, so we know where the layer is as we sketch our motion. Showing the background would allow us to keep any background layers or layers below our motion sketch layer active while we sketch our information. Down at the bottom, we see the start where our motion capture will begin and the duration for the motion capture itself. We'll go to frame 0 to make sure that the playhead is at the beginning of our composition by pressing Home on the keyboard. Next, we'll press Start Capture to activate the motion sketch. Now you don't have to rush over to the composition window to begin sketching the motion. After Effects is going to wait for you and won't begin capturing your cursor movement until you click on the comp window. So I can move my cursor over to the comp window, and I want to click and hold while I draw the motion sketch. So, with my cursor anywhere inside the comp window, I'll click and draw my motion sketch. As long as I'm holding the mouse button down, After Effects will continue to create keyframes wherever my mouse is moving. Here we can see all of the keyframes that have been created as I moved my mouse. If I'm not happy with the movement, I can go back, click on Start Capture again, and create a brand new motion sketch. If I open the position parameters for this layer by typing P on the keyboard, I can see all of the keyframes that After Effects requires to create that motion. You'll also know that all of these keyframes are linear. There are many keyframes in here that I may not want and have to manually remove in order to smooth out this animation. I can smooth out my entire animation by changing the smoothing while I create the motion sketch. Remember, in the motion sketch options, there is an option for smoothing. By modifying this parameter, I can increase the number of frames by which After Effects will smooth the keyframes out, eliminating some keyframes in order to create a much smoother animation. We'll change our smoothing value from 1 to 4, then create a new capture by pressing on the Start Capture button and drawing a new motion sketch. Now you can see that although the move was similar, After Effects uses fewer frames to complete that same animation. The smoothing has been done for the entire motion sketch. However, if I want to smooth just a few keyframes out, I can go up to the Window pull-down menu, then open up the panel for the Smoother. The smoother works in a similar way, smoothing either the spatial or the temporal path for the keyframes that I've selected. Here in the smoother window, you see that we have the options to change either the spatial or, if I have the graph open, the temporal graph. Here I'll smooth out the spatial parameters of all of the keyframes. By changing a tolerance from a value of 1 to a value of 2, I'll hit apply. Now we can see the keyframes and all of their handles become a little more smooth. We can also select a range of keyframes that we want to smooth by clicking in the timeline and selecting only the range of keyframes we want to modify. We'll change our tolerance value now to 4 and applying again. You can see that this time I'm smoothing just those keyframes and not the entire sketch. Once that's applied, I'll close the panel for the smoother, allowing a little more space for my timeline. Now we can see what this looks like with a quick RAM preview. Because we've moved our mesh shape to the left of the layer, it's no longer visible on screen right now. I'll press 0 on the number pad to create a RAM preview and see where this layer is going to become visible. Now we can see that the motion sketch is applying position data to our layer and not to any of the pins. However, with a little creative expression, we can modify the mesh so that each puppet pin looks at a different null object for its position value that we motion sketch.